DW Africa Link.
India and Ghana, two long-standing partners within the Global South, are charting a new course in their bilateral relations. This fresh momentum in defense, cooperation, trade and investment follows Prime Minister Narendra Modi's high-level visit to Accra. The two countries are now aligning more closely on strategic interests, from counter-terrorism and cybersecurity to infrastructure development and technology exchange. In this episode, we break down the key agreements, explore what's driving this renewed engagement, and ask what it means for the balance of power on the continent and beyond. The India-Ghana relationship is not just a topic of discussion, but a significant development in the global political landscape. That's what's coming up. Stay tuned. My name is Josey Mahachi. Welcome to Africa Link, the podcast that connects you to the stories that matter from Africa.
Africa Link, every weekday here on DW.
This week, history was made as India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi and Ghana's President John Mahama agreed to deepen security and mining ties. This marks the first visit by an Indian leader to Ghana in 3 decades, a significant milestone in the relationship between these two nations. The visit, a testament to the enduring bond between India and Ghana, comes as the Asian nation competes with China and Russia for economic influence in Africa. Now, joining me for the discussion is Dr. Afriyie, a political analyst, as well as our DW correspondent in Accra, Kaledzi. Now, I'll just start with you. Kaledzi is our correspondent on the ground, just to possibly summarize and wrap up the visit by the Prime Minister, how it was and how Ghanaians received him.
I think basically the Prime Minister was fairly welcomed in Ghana. Well, there are a lot of Ghanaians who really love India. I mean, both for the culture that they have and basically also the kind of support they have provided over the years in Ghana in terms of business and the other things that they do in the country. So I would say fairly he was well received. For example, even in Ghana's parliament where the Prime Minister addressed the lawmakers. I mean, we saw some lawmakers actually dressed in the Indian kind of costume. So it tells you that people really admire India. And I think the trip was well organized as well. And obviously, the decision to even award him as part of the trip obviously tells you that indeed this trip was very significant for Ghana. For example, Ghana's seat of government, the presidency, was a kind gesture from the Indians to Ghana. So it tells you the bond that the two nations have here.
Right. Now, coming to you, Dr. Afriyie, just to find out also how you would describe relations between these two countries, Ghana and India.
Ghana and India, I think from 1953, established a presence in Accra, that is Ghana, where the relationship started. And so far, we can say that India and Ghana, whether they are sisters or brotherhood, for all this while, you can testify from the perspective of political and economic and also social-cultural and technological perspective, where based on, in terms of governmental or political, you can testify that there's a lot of government relationship that has gone on, where there's these presidents come to visit Ghana and they also visit, and we can indicate it from the I think the Fourth Republic, where most of these leaders that is the Fourth Republic, the leaders that came, President Kufuor, President Mahama, and also President Nanado, they all have visited India. And I think over 30 years now that there has not been any Indian high-level delegation into Ghana, especially that's the presidency, and this is the time. So it's like a relationship built over years, I think 70 years or so, and a lot of years ahead. And that shows, and kind of, and we have not heard or we have not seen any kind of diplomatic row between India and Ghana all these while. So I believe that the relationship was being cemented or tried to be built more on comprehensive approach, because it has moved on from more levels. We have a lot of examples, a lot of areas that Ghana has benefited. We can testify that more than 900 Indian companies at least are trading in Ghana, and we can testify that the investment is almost more than $3 billion all this while. So you see that India and Ghana, there's a lot of relation. We can talk about education, we can talk about defense, we can talk about cultural, we can talk about scholarship, we can talk about health. There's a lot, and even trade. You know that 70% of Indian gold are mostly from Ghana, and there's a lot that has gone on or is going on between the two countries. So the visit is just welcoming. The visit is just to make the two countries just move ahead from a different level and maybe to focus on different areas in their respective countries that has not been exploited.
Now, Dr. Afriyie, just listening to you and what also Isaac Kaledzi said earlier, it really looks like India and Ghana have very deep, strong relations. But it has taken 3 decades for an Indian leader to visit Ghana. This was the first visit in 3 decades. That's about 30 years. Why has it been like that?
You know, the geopolitics of the world sometimes makes some of these leaders and some of these big countries to look elsewhere and to build relationship. And I think what has led the prime minister to come into even to rejuvenate or to activate more levels of cooperation is due to the Chinese kind of dominance in Africa, and especially in the West Africa. And you know now currently India holds the world population more than 1.4 billion, as that is over to take over that is the Chinese, and so now it has come to reality that they also have to take some control or have to penetrate into areas so that they can expand their geopolitics, power and authority in some countries. If not, I think the Chinese will take over most of these Africa, or should I say West Africa, where so they are now on the move. I think this Prime Minister Mundi has been trying as much as practicable to create more links and to link to where the Indians will benefit more in terms of geopolitics. And that is what he has identified. I think there was a neglect a little bit in terms of high power delegation. And I think what the Prime Minister has done or visit Ghana is to look at the other perspective too, also because Ghana is central to the West African region, and it's peaceful. It has a lot of potentials, and it can be a stage where they can use it to also link up to the other West African countries. And you know, some of these tourists and other kind of jihad that is going on in other countries, and also give a threat to some of these interests of India.
Right. Quickly before I turn to Isaac, Dr. Afriyie, you touched on the jihadists, and yeah, it's clear India wants to play a role in the Sahel region, where jihadists have recently intensified offenses in Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger. In what ways can we see India's support to pacify the region?
You know, we can testify from the support that the Indians gave to the Nigerian government in terms of the Boko Haram. They supported the Nigerians with a lot of military. And you don't forget that India is also one of the suppliers of military equipment. And we can testify that they supply to Egypt, they supply to Algeria, Tanzania, and Mozambique, and some other countries. So they also want to look at the military strength where they can penetrate to some of these countries with their power. And then they have been more supportive to the Nigerian government in terms of defense. And I think about a while ago, President Mundi visited, I think made a transit visit to Nigeria, where he was even being given the order, that is the highest award of the country, and also pledged their support in terms of defense. So he also see Ghana as also a strategic interest, where they can also use that as a stage to counter some of these insurgents from, that is because you know that the northern part of Ghana, we have Burkina Faso, we have the Sahel, these three countries that have been at least withdrawn from the West African community. So Ghana being at the center here, meaning that they have a border with these countries. At the same time, I think Ghana is seen as a more diplomatic relations with these countries that have left the Sahel, that is, they have left the ECOWAS. So it is making Ghana to play a key role of even trying to bring these people back. If not, then Ghana has to ensure that those countries are safe for these insurgents not to come. We realize that the Russians, has taken over some of these West African countries through military support. And Burkina Faso is one, and other countries that we can mention, Niger is one. So you realize that the influence of the Russians and also the Chinese in the West Africa in terms of military support is making these, that is the Indians, to also seek another country to support apart from Nigeria. And then they think that Ghana, for all this, while they have a long-term relationship with them, they can make a great stride when it comes to military support to help in these insurgents in most of these Sahel countries.
Right. Now, Isaac Kaledzi, just to also ask you for the benefit of our listeners, if you could just please break down Prime Minister Narendra Modi's historic address, his speech to the parliament. I mean, this obviously marked a significant moment in India-Ghana relations and broader India-Africa engagement. We also saw that he was also awarded the Ghana's highest honor, and how significant that was.
So let me start first with the speech. Well, basically, I mean, it was great that he was in Ghana's parliament. I mean, India is the largest democracy in the world, looking at the population, really. And for example, in his speech, he mentioned that they have 2,500 political parties. That's a lot of political parties. Yeah, that tells you how huge it is. And for Ghana also, which tries to profess that it's a leading democracy in Africa, it obviously is a significant moment, because in his speech, he tries to draw the linkage that in India, a democracy really is seen as a value for what they are doing. So there's no other option than to practice democracy. And for countries like Ghana or other countries in Africa, it means that we will need to deepen our democracies and deepen our and strengthen our institutions, which obviously was something he highlighted. He also highlighted in his speech then the support that India can offer countries like Ghana, in especially a shift from what you see from the West and China or Russia, where you obviously are going to see India more into skills, building up of the skills of Ghanaians, trying to have more setting up of some of the institutions that will really boost the growth of the country here in Ghana. So you see that there's a shift in what India wants to do, because again, in his speech, he tries to identify that India seems to appreciate the history of countries like Ghana or Africa, where the colonialism actually was dominant. And of course, we know that, like Doc said, pre-independence of Ghana, India has been there trying to draw that kind of support or link, have that kind of tie with Ghana. And of course, he mentioned the need for the global South to see India as that leader, that if India is stable and India is growing and is stronger, can obviously have a leverage for the countries in Africa. So the speech really was just trying to give us a note that India sees itself as a better partner, a better friend to Africa and Ghana in this context. And of course, the award obviously was just to show how the kind of love or kind of friendship between Ghana and India. And obviously, again, because during his era as a prime minister, he's helped to actually lift up this particular relationship between most African countries and India and in Ghana in this context. So this was just to say thank you for what you've done. And like I said earlier, for example, our presidency, the seat of government was built by the Indians. So obviously, again, it tells you that this is just to show appreciation for what India has been doing for Ghana. Don't forget, and I'm sure that maybe we'll talk about that in the coming minutes, but indeed, India has also been a strong business partner for Ghana. So this is all my way of saying thank you. Yeah.
No, we can actually touch on that with you, Isaac, as you still have the mic. In terms of volume, we are talking of how much does Ghana export and earn from these exports. Ghana's primary trading partners and the leading destination for Ghanaian exports, primarily due to India's substantial gold imports, is India.
Yeah, definitely. And that is very huge because, gold is one of our leading export portfolios. And India is one of the leading buyers of our gold. So they import a lot of our goods, or we export goods to go to India. And if you look at the volume of trade between us, pre-COVID, it was around over $4 billion. Okay, and after the COVID, because we all know what happened with COVID, it's now around $3 billion. But substantial amount of that is out of gold. Okay, so let's over $1.8 billion is about gold. So it tells you that if we really want to rake in more revenue from our gold, India indeed is a leading partner in that regard. And beyond just that, we have a lot of Indian businesses operating in Ghana in various sectors, okay, and they are all helping to boost our economy. So indeed, yes, trade is, and of course, the expectation is that this could even go higher in the coming years. Yeah.
Right. Now, Doc, just listening to Isaac Kaledzi giving us these figures of how much business is happening between these two nations. I mean, India also has close ties with Russia, but is often in rivalry with China. You did touch on that earlier. Two powers vying for more influence in Africa. Now, with India in the mix, isn't Ghana and the region going to be another theater of competition from foreign superpowers?
Yes, initially and mostly when you have a colonial ties, you know that Ghana belongs to that is a common of which India also belongs to, and most of the time you can realize that you go in line with your colonial powers, and mostly the Western countries like the US will try to also influence. But now the Asians and also the Russians and the Chinese taking over some of these. They also have realized that they also have to improve, or they have to ensure that if you want to be dominant in the world of politics and power, you need to have other countries that you support. You need to build yourself in some strategic positions. And that is what the Indians have realized and now trying to do. And they are now basing on people that they have moved with them for a very long time, that they were not able to shift the agenda from the traditional relationship to a new global order. And that is what the Indians are trying to do now. They are now picking countries that they belong to in the Commonwealth, and that was a traditional relationship, or the colonial kind of. But now they want to shift to another level, or using that as a platform to have a global dominance, and that is a strategy that the Indians are trying to do this time, and they are now moving strongly. And this leader, I think, based on his vision, based on his international diplomacy, is making an inroads a lot, and is making India to become one of the global powers. I think very soon we see them overtaking some of these powers. And that is where now the US and the UKs and other countries are now having themselves that their interest. The Western countries, their relationship with the African countries mostly seems to be controlling them, trying to direct them to what they want them to do. But these countries from Asia, Indians, Chinese, and Russians, they have a mutual kind of relationship. They tried not to impose a lot of restrictions. They try not to impose themselves on these countries, especially in Africa. So now Africa is now switching in a gradual manner to countries that will be sympathetic, countries that they will have mutual kind of respect. And I think that is what President Mahama said in the latter part, I think, on his speech, that they need to have a mutual kind of a platform. They are moving to countries that they will respect them, countries that they will benefit, and they also benefit from Ghana. So now the Indians are moving into a different direction, and they are now making inroads in terms of global politics to become one of the big countries in the world.
Right. Now, Doc, you just touched on Mahama's part of his speech there, and I was actually going to ask you that for the benefit of our listeners, for you to just expound on that, because he's just been in office for 6 months, but he said government, and I quote, will leverage on its relationship with like-minded countries such as India to achieve our set objectives, end of quote. What exactly did he mean by this statement?
You see, what the President Mahama said was that to link up with countries that will not tend to be selfish inclined, trying to be more in position of the ideologies, and also kind of, when you go to these Western countries and you some loans and some bilateral agreement or whatever, you see that it's just one-sided. So now the President Mahama wants to assure the world and even the India that they have a wider perspective of any country, which means that any country is welcome to build any relationship. So the doors are open for countries that can think in the direction, the vision of the country, so that you don't come in and try to impose things on us. Now, when it comes to economic issues, you realize that these Western countries tend to impose strong economic rules and regulations, of which even now, Ghana, we are under World Bank. And you see the kind of restrictions that will be given to you because we are unable to manage our economy well. So now the president wants to assure the countries or like-minded countries that they are all welcome. It's not about ideology this time. It's not about traditional relationship. It's not about colonialism. It's about to do business with a country. You are welcome. And that is what the President Mahama was trying to assure other countries or other minded members in the Commonwealth, that they are all welcome if you think in the right direction to our country's development.
Right. Now, Kaledzi, as we wrap up our discussion, the leaders also discussed cooperation in vaccine production. What kind of vaccines are we talking about?
So, basically, it covers several kinds of vaccines, but obviously, we know that COVID is gone. But when COVID came, there was a need for Africa to find a way to be able to produce what kind of vaccines, any kind of vaccine that could be needed for any kind of treatment. So there were no specific as to exactly the kind of vaccine, but we know there are several vaccines that are needed for our health purposes. Vaccination of children under 5, immunization, drive is something that Ghana really takes seriously. Polio and other kinds of illnesses need vaccines, and so giving us the capacity to be able to produce these vaccines ourselves, instead of just relying on vaccines coming from outside, is really the ambition of Ghana.
Right. Thank you so much, Dr. Samuel Afriyie and DW's Isaac Kaledzi, for joining us here on DW Africa Link podcast today. At the Africa Link podcast, we always look across the continent to see how the stories we are dealing with play out or at times even overlap. Well, if you think it's only India that's interested in deepening relations with African countries in its quest to become a superpower, you could be mistaken. From July 6 to 8, the Spain Africa Summit 2025 will take place in Madrid. It marks a pivotal moment in Euro-African relations, focusing on deepening strategic, economic, and human cooperation between Spain and the African continent. This platform for action aligns with Africa's growing position as a new hub of the global economy. Additionally to the forum, US President Donald Trump has also invited 5 African heads of state to discuss business opportunities. We will be here to discuss developments of Africa's partnerships with Europe and the West. That's it for this edition of Africa Link. Remember, you are not just a listener, but a vital part of our community. Your engagement and insights can shape the direction of our discussions. We value your thoughts and encourage you to share them with us. Your contributions are what makes Africa Link a dynamic platform for understanding and discussing African affairs. Remember, you can find all of the Africa Link podcast episodes on Spotify and Apple or wherever you listen to your podcasts from. This episode was co-produced and edited by Isaac Mugabi. My name is Josephine Mahachi. Thanks for listening. Until the next one, it's bye for now.
DW, made for minds.